In 1996, the remains of what is now known as the Kennewick Man was discovered alongside the Columbia River. The skull was sent to James Chatters, a local archaeologist. The remaining bones were dug up and sent to Chatters' labs shortly after the discovery. He sent a piece of the bone to be carbon dated and discovered that it was more than 9,000 years old. This was one of the oldest bone discoveries in America, which intrigued many people. When word got out that the Kennewick Man was believed to be Native American, Armand Minthorn, a Umatilla Reservation tribal councilman and spiritual leader, told the archaeologists and scientists to stop testing immediately because he had no doubt that the Kennewick Man was indeed Native American. This began one of the biggest battles regarding remains ever seen in America. The big question I will discuss is who owns the rights to the remains, the scientists or the Native Americans? I understand both arguments, but most people can agree that this is a moral dilemma. Native Americans have been ridiculed and taken advantage of ever since Europeans came to their land. Therefore, I believe that they should have the rights to the Kennewick Man's remains. The points I discuss are about science, race, and culture. Johann F. Blumenbach was an anthropologist that studied variations between a single species. Specifically, he studied over 80 human skulls. He was the first one to classify the races of humans. There was Caucasoid, which was people of European, Middle Eastern, and North African origin. Mongoloids, people originating from East and Central Asia. Native Americans mostly resembled this race. And finally, there was Negroids, people of African descent. He used anthropology as a way to promote discrimination between races. He believed that Caucasians were the best and most beautiful race. Samuel George Morton was an anthropologist like Blumenbach. He believed in polygenesis, which is the belief of multiple racial creations. He categorized the skulls by size and believed that the smaller size was likely to be from African descent. Most of Morton's conclusions regarding the race of multiple skulls were made from a racist perspective. His research was skewed to fit his racial beliefs that God created different races for ranking and enslavement. Franz Boas was the first anthropologist to steer away of race and racism and prove that the notion of race was a mistake. He attested that the traits cannot distinguish the cultural differences or similarities. He was the first to discredit Blumenbach by demonstrating that Negro, white, and all other races were biologically equal. Although his findings were not the reason why scientists do not believe in race, it still made an impact. Scientists were realizing that considering race as a factor when studying remains led to many errors. The skull's size and shape only determined the person's location and how that person lived their life. With advanced technology, scientists now study race by genetic and DNA testing. Race isn't used as an explanation for social and cultural differences anymore. Scientists believe that humans are much too diverse to be classified by race just from the skull's shape and size. If science has proven that Native Americans are no different than Caucasians, they should be respected and viewed as equal. Unfortunately, the government didn't respect this because they were more interested in studying the remains of the Kennewick Man. Native Americans were always viewed as savage and unintelligent. Ever since the Europeans came to America for the purpose of colonization, they've taken advantage of the Native Americans' generosity. They were killed from diseases brought by the Europeans and even kicked out of their own land. In 1887, the Dawes Act was created in order to assimilate Native Americans into the United States. The government wanted for them to lose their culture and be Americanized. This act divided the land of the Indian reservation and allocated it to the individual Native Americans who obliged the allotment policy and transitioned to the American society. They lost close to 1/2 of their lands of limited use or value. Tribal termination was similar to the Dawes Act in that it forced the Native Americans to assimilate into the mainstream Christian society. All government treaties were ended in hope that they would lose their culture and identify as Christian American. Their reservations were stolen, along with their culture. Native Americans have been undermined and robbed from everything. They lost their lives and homes because of expansion. The government and Europeans never respected them, but instead wanted to suppress their culture. They have always been controlled and disrespected, and it's time that changes. Although it can be important to study one of the oldest human remains found, the Native Americans should have the first say in this because it is their ancestors' bones. The government should not have a say in putting him to rest. Scientists have done enough tests to prove the originality and story of the Kennewick Man. It is time for America to respect the Native Americans' beliefs and history.